Part 5. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 41. When the box under the bookcase was opened, the light inside was dim and covered with a thin layer of coins. Greet carefully poured them out, separated them according to color, and spread out the points one by one. After counting, count again. 10 gold coins. 8 silver coins. Among the gold coins, there is another one that looks particularly different. Greet picked it up and identified it carefully. Among the 10 gold coins, 9 have a beautiful woman wearing a crown on the front, and roses entwined with leaves on the back. I think they should be gold coins of the country. The front seems to be the Queen's portrait, and as for the back, it is said to be the royal emblem. The last one shows a bearded man wearing a crown on the front, and a two-headed eagle with wings spread on the back. The emblem is different, the avatar is different. Considering that the backs of other silver coins also have rose patterns, it seems that this special-looking one comes from a foreign country? As for how it was left behind, what its currency value was, and whether it could be spent directly, Gretel searched his memory and found nothing. In any case, these 10 gold coins and 8 silver coins are the last savings left by the original body's father to the original body. Bury it under the bed, press it under the book box, and tell him not to use it unless absolutely necessary. The reason why there are gold coins and silver coins is because the children are young and weak and will rashly use the gold coins to spend, which will cause trouble. How much will you take out this time? Greet thought carefully, counted 8 gold coins and put them back into the box, including of course the double-headed eagle, and put back 3 silver coins. He carefully reset the box, cleaned up the traces on the ground, took the money bag, rushed out of the house, and rushed to the paper and pencil shop. In Heartland City, Gretel could only remember one shop that sold pens and paper. The store is near the square at the entrance of the city lord's mansion, 200 meters south along the street, which is considered a prime location in the entire city. There was a lot of traffic at the door, carriages with family crests in them came and went, and gentlemen and ladies passed by from time to time. 2 lanterns were hung on the left and right of the shop door, and the lights illuminated half of the street. There was actually a doorman under the lantern, wearing a white shirt and overalls. He was holding a wooden board 1 foot wide and more than 2 meters high, and was boarding the shop. When Greet came, the doorman gave him a surprised look. His eyes glanced at Greet's obviously altered linen shirt, mud-spattered trouser legs, and patched backpack. His lips twitched, but he put down the door panel and went over to open the door for Greet. Stepping into the store, a half-person high wooden counter divides the entire store into 2 parts, the inside and the outside. Sitting bored at the counter was a young clerk in a white shirt, a black vest, and a black tie tied neatly under his neck, with a dejected expression of "Leave me alone, I have to get off work." There is nothing else outside the counter. Inside, in the cabinet behind the clerk, there is a dazzling array of paper rolls, quill pens, ink, stationery boxes, etc., filling the whole wall. Gretel craned his neck to look at the scrolls. The waiter raised his head, glanced quickly, and asked lazily, "Buy what?" "Paper." Gretel was interrupted after saying one word. The clerk added casually without raising his eyes, "Parchment paper costs 2 silver coins each, and white paper costs 4 silver coins. How much do you want?" "So expensive?" Gretel was shocked. 2 silver coins a piece of parchment paper, that's fine, after all, it is peeled from the sheep. What does 4 silver coins a piece of white paper mean? Could this be Chinsentang paper? No, no, that's not the point. If ordinary white paper is twice as expensive as parchment, how did paper making survive without being squeezed out of business by parchment? The young clerk rolled his eyes angrily. He did not answer. Instead, he folded his hands and added with his chin held high, "The minimum selling price is 10 pieces." One sheet costs 2 silver coins, 10 sheets equals 20 silver coins, or 2 gold coins. How many sheets of paper do you need to copy the entire book? Is 1000 enough? To sum it up, this amount alone is 200 gold coins. Except for the box of alchemy equipment and surgical instruments, the family's house, furniture, and everything else were sold out. Probably, they couldn't afford it. Greet did the math and asked with a glimmer of hope, is there anything cheaper? Cheap, the guy raised his eyebrows. Just as he was about to say a few more words, an old man rushed out of the store. There are some. Which one do you want, guest? The old man was more luxuriously dressed than the young man. There was a velvet trim on the coat, and the buttons on the round belly were so shiny that they almost flew off. As soon as he came out, he gave the waiter a hard look and then put on a smile. The shop has all kinds of goods. The cheapest one, writing paper from Woolwich, costs 4 silver coins for a knife. The whiter and smoother one, official document paper from Northumberland, costs 1 gold coin for a knife. The white paper you just heard about, guest, is ordered by the Magic Tower outside the city all year round. It is said that it can be used to copy scrolls to increase the success rate and is better than parchment paper. Each one only costs 4 silver coins, so it's still cheap. It turns out to be special paper for copying magic scrolls. Gretel suddenly realized, although paper-making technology has become popular, high-end paper products are not so easy to produce. Not to mention that the magic paper represents real power. In the previous life, the top student Qian was able to sell 10,000 to 20,000 with one knife. How many cuts per knife? The young man curled his lips. But the old man didn't seem to think this question was too low level at all, and he still had a smile on his face. 25 tickets, no deductions. Gretel quickly calculated silently. A knife costs 25 cards and costs 4 silver coins. 1,000 cards cost 160 silver coins, or 16 gold coins. His hand was full, but he only had 10 gold coins, 8 plus 2 for a total of 10 silver coins, and 7 copper coins. Copying the entire book is definitely not enough. As for a new city guard soldier, like him, his monthly salary is 5 silver coins, the monthly salary of a squad leader is 15 silver coins. 1,000 pieces of paper costs 16 gold coins, which is almost as much as the squad leader's annual income, but for a child to learn to read and write, is 1,000 pieces of paper enough for a year? Surely it's not enough? These days, reading and writing are really only the privileges of the upper class. Gretel sighed. After sighing, he continued to ask about the price. Can it be cheaper if I buy more? One order is 20 knives, 7 gold coins and 5 silver coins. The store will deliver it to your door. Where's the pen? Where's the ink? Quill pen, a quill pen with 2 silver coins, can be sharpened at least 20 times. A refined quill pen with 4 silver coins, can be sharpened at least 50 times, comes with a sharpening knife. Ordinary writing ink, 2 ounces in a bottle silver coins, a large 5-ounce bottle, 8 silver coins. Really good at doing business. Gretel smiled bitterly. This method of differentiating pricing and attracting business is very similar to the family packs, mass market packs, and combination packs in supermarkets in previous lives. He weighed his needs and took out his wallet. First, buy 4 knives of ordinary writing paper and a fine quill pen. I only brought 2 gold coins and 5 silver coins, and a large bottle of ink. Can you sell me another bottle? Paper, pen, and ink, totaling 2 gold coins and 8 silver coins. Gretel was about to cut off 10% of his salary at this opening. The young man looked on coldly and couldn't help but sneered and coldly snorted. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. Can you afford gold coins? Everyone is so busy on weekdays. Please give me a collection, recommendations, book reviews, and various interactions to let me know if you have read it. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 42. Henry. The old man frowned. While scolding, he couldn't help but change his gaze, and took a look at Gretel in a hidden way. Greet paused as she untied her purse. It seems that the old man is suspicious of him. It's no wonder that people doubted his clothes. He didn't look like an aristocrat, a servant didn't look like a servant, and an employee didn't look like an employee. He also sounded like he bought it for himself out of his own pocket. If the identity and income do not match, it will arouse suspicion wherever you put it. Although he can withstand investigation, there is no need to cause trouble for himself. Gretel remained silent and continued to take coins out of his wallet. 1 gold coin, 2 gold coins, the old man's eyes jumped and he immediately smiled. Guest, are you joking? It's a small business. If it's too cheap, I'm afraid I'll lose money. If the customer doesn't have money, why don't you buy 2 small bottles first? As he spoke, he picked up a gold coin, looked left and right, blew on it, put it to his ear, and bit it with his teeth. Gretel's eyes jumped when he saw it. You are still biting at such an old age, you are not afraid of chipping your teeth. Besides, these gold coins were placed in a box and buried underground for so many years. After touching this thing, I didn't dare to take anything to eat without washing my hands, but you actually put it directly into my mouth. Intestinal infection, diarrhea, vomiting, fever. Gretel was thinking erratically, staring at the gold coins, his eyes getting weirder and weirder. The old man's face also became strange. He arched his body forward and opened his arms, subconsciously assuming a vigilant posture. With this tension and exertion, I somehow took in a breath, and the whole gold coin rolled and went directly into my throat. The old man's face suddenly twisted. He said several times, stretched out his hand to strangle his throat, and his eyes bulged like a frog. It stuck. Gold coin stuck. Suffocated. Greet was startled. The young man next to him was also frightened, and went to slap the old man on the back in a panic. Sir. Mr. Hogan. Slapping has no effect. The old man's fat body leaned forward and backward, he lowered his head and vomited several times, and soon his face turned purple. The young man hugged him with one hand and tried to pry his mouth and scratch his throat with the other hand. At the same time, he shouted outside. Quick! Get the pharmacist. I know, the doorman agreed outside the store and ran away. If you are sick or injured, you should ask a priest, but, isn't the pharmacist right next door? Anyway, when everyone can't afford a priest or the priest is too busy, they will make do by hiring a pharmacist to save people. The treatment effect can be considered to be effective, just injecting medicine and so on, at a slower speed. The young man shouted and continued to save the old man. Suddenly, Greet pushed himself against the counter, jumped up, and climbed over the counter. What are you doing? The young man shouted. He wanted to help the old man, but also wanted to drive Gretel away, and he was in a hurry. I couldn't move my hands away, so I could only yell loudly. What are you doing? Get out! Get out! Gretel ignored him, stepped forward, pushed the young man away, and wrapped his arms around the old man from behind. After all, he is also a first-level warrior. Compared with the knights, he is weak, but he can still bully the store clerk with accuracy. The young man was thrown away by him and slammed against the cabinet at the back. He could only shrink into a ball and shouted loudly. Someone's coming, it's time to grab something. Who? Who? There was the sound of footsteps, and a middle-aged man rushed in quickly with a glass bottle in his left hand and a wooden spoon in his right hand. Gretel probably was the pharmacist. Then the doorman rushed in, looking for sticks all over the floor, and shouted at Greet. What are you doing? Let go of Mr. Hogan. Gretel had no time to pay attention to them. He stood in a lunge with his legs in front and back, and hugged the fat old man with his arms. With a little force, the old man sank down. His fat body slipped and sat directly on Greet's right thigh, his upper body leaning forward under his pressure. "What are you doing?" shouted the pharmacist. He was not young and did not dare to jump directly onto the counter like Gretel. He could only try to move his legs and try to rush to give the old man medicine. He was panting while running and yelled, "Let him go! Let him go! Why are you strangling him when he's stuck?" After only half a circle, Greet had already set up his posture and started to rescue. Put your hands around the old man's armpits, make a fist with your left hand, and hold your left wrist from the front with your right hand. Place the tiger's mouth of your left hand against the old man's upper abdomen, use both arms to draw inwards and upwards. Wipe. Too fat, it slipped. I hate fat people the most. It takes one more person to lift it up when crossing the bed, and it is difficult to reach the right place for extra cardiac compression. When someone performs an abdominal surgery, you can see the abdominal cavity with one cut, but he only saw fat with one cut. Even the anesthesia dose must be recalculated, and the anesthesiologist must be extra careful. Look at it now, the Heimlich maneuver can slide right off. The clerks and pharmacists were still shouting. Gretel was distraught and yelled, "Shut up! You come out!" The doorman looked around, finally grabbed a door bolt, lowered his head and ducked through the counter baffle. Greet shouted, "I'm saving him." His left fist moved up, and his right hand followed suit, pressing against the fat old man's sternum. Take a deep breath, use your arms again, and close them. One time. Twice. Boom. The door bolt was knocked down hard. Greet had no time to dodge, so he could only turn his head slightly and receive the blow with his left shoulder. Under the pain, his arm suddenly surged with force and pushed hard against the old man's chest, the third time. Cough, 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 cough. The old man coughed violently. After coughing for a while, he suddenly opened his mouth and spit out something. It fell on the table with a clang, and spun around a few times under the light, shining with golden light. Greet's whole body relaxed. He let go of his arms, raised his right hand to rub his left shoulder, and glared at the doorman resentfully. The doorman was halfway through the second blow with his stick. He raised his right hand high and froze in shock. Is this possible? The pharmacist froze on the spot. As soon as he let go of his right hand, the glass bottle fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Cough, 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 huh, huh, huh. The old man coughed for a long time, finally took a breath, and turned around. When he turned his head, he saw the doorman who was frozen in place holding a stick, and Gretel, who was gasping and rubbing his shoulders. His eyes narrowed and he was stunned on the spot. The pharmacist rushed forward desperately. Why is this possible? If a person is stuck, can he be rescued by hugging his chest? Please, please tell me. I'll give you the money. I'll give it all to you. He quickly started digging into his pockets. The money bag, the gold chain, and even the buttons on the coat were all wanted to be pulled off. They couldn't be pulled after a handful of pulls. Gretel sweated. His right hand was busy throwing healing spells to his left shoulder, so he could only stretch out his left hand and reluctantly pull the opponent. You don't have to do this, it's just a little trick, very simple. Damn it! What I'm pushing is my diaphragm. Who told you to hug your chest? If you don't explain it clearly, it won't harm people. The stick on my shoulder finally stopped hurting. Greet freed up his hands and began to make gestures and give lectures to the pharmacist. Under the light, as the middle-aged pharmacist nodded repeatedly, his waist gradually bent forward from 5 degrees to 10 degrees, and then to 15 degrees. The fat old man opened his mouth. Sweat immediately formed on his fat forehead. Why did he suspect that the other party had no money just now? Why should you suspect that the gold coin came from something wrong? Well now, I offended a genuine healer. Even the pharmacist next door has to listen to others' lectures respectfully. It's okay now. The other party doesn't even look at him anymore and is busy chatting with the pharmacist. The old man reacted very quickly. When Gretel finished speaking, he immediately bowed deeply and saluted. The fat on the belly was squeezed like this, and 2 pleats were made on the spot. Dear healer, thank you for your life-saving grace, and please forgive the rudeness of the shop. Gretel quickly stopped teaching to help him. The old man straightened up following his strength, holding his hands on his waist, and shouted to the young clerk. Roger, get what the healer wants. Frank, get a ream of the best white paper, no, 2 reams. And get 10 quills and 2 large bottles of ink. Hurry. A doorman and a store clerk were all yelled at by him so that they rushed back and forth without even touching the floor. This time, it was Gretel who was busy trying to stop him. No need, I can't afford these. How can I ask you to pay for it? The old man laughed, puffed out his chest and belly again, and slapped his chest loudly. Dear healer, you are my lifesaver. Not to mention repaying you, I have to pay for the treatment, right? But the operation of the Heimlich maneuver, the diagnosis and treatment fee, well, usually in this case, you can't wait for registration and payment before treatment, but such a simple operation really costs money, maybe dozens of yuan at most, right? No buts? This store belongs to me. Isn't the old man's life worth a few pieces of paper? At least change it to ordinary paper, magic paper is too expensive. Then add 2 reams of ordinary paper. Roger. Pack the things and send them to Mr. Healer's house. Heimlich maneuver. It is suitable for acute respiratory foreign body obstruction. Greet uses a slightly modified version, which is used when the patient is obese or pregnant. I suggest you search and memorize it, it is very useful. Yesterday, only 23 people voted for recommendation, and a total of 103 votes were received. However, there were 41 people who commented, which may include likes. Did I write poorly? Keep asking for votes. Please collect it. Please recommend. Please review the book. Asking for a monthly ticket. Ask for anything. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Lan 2020. Chapter 43. A large pile of goods is placed in front of you. The square table in Gretel's house was so packed that there was almost no space left. 2 reams of writing paper or official paper. Without comparison, Gretel couldn't tell which one was which. He could only judge that this paper was of much better quality than the hemp paper he brought today. 2 reams of magic scroll paper. Soft, white, and smooth. Although the appearance is not as good as the A4 paper in the previous life, compared with the pages I saw during the day, it is already quite good. 10 quill pens, the nibs are sharpened and the tangent line in the center of the pen barrel is long and straight. A pencil sharpener came with it. Gretel tried the steel tip and it seemed to be very sharp. 2 bottles of ink. The large 5-ounce bottle is about 3 times the size of the hero ink from the previous life. It looks like it can be used for the first half of the year. Gretel took stock of his harvest. If the cheaper paper is official document paper, and 1 knife costs 1 gold coin, that's 20 gold coins. 2 reams of magic paper, 1 ream worth 20 knives, 1 knives worth 25 pieces, 4 silver coins each, tisk. 400 gold coins. A refined quill costs 4 silver coins each, and a large bottle of ink costs 8 silver coins. Added together, the total is 5 gold coins and 6 silver coins. Calculating the general ledger, the cost of this treatment is 425 gold coins. I don't know what the profit margin of that stationery store is. Even if it is beneficial to the enemy, the old man still throws away more than 200 gold coins. But having said that, how much is the price of a life, or a magic spell that cures fatal injuries in this world? Greet scratched his head, then scratched his head. He didn't know the answer to this question very clearly, but in the online articles he had read before, treating fatal injuries seemed to be a level 4, level 5, or level 6 magic. Anyway, it must be a few thousand gold coins to start with, which ordinary people, even the ordinary middle class, cannot afford. The same is true if you think carefully about your past life. It is human nature that if spending money can save lives, most people will do their best. When encountering a serious illness, it is not uncommon for a family to spend hundreds of thousands in the ICU. If you choke on a gold coin or something, you may be lucky and be able to swallow it. If you are unlucky, you may die on the spot if a foreign body blocks your esophagus. Before, he immediately rescued someone, and if not his whole life, he saved half of his life. So if a shopkeeper rewards him with a few goods from his shop, is that okay? Greed worked hard for a long time to mentally build up, and finally felt at ease. He looked at the piles of white paper on the table and smiled little by little. Suddenly, he made fists with both hands and raised them high. Yeah. Got money? No, I have pen and paper. Don't worry about copying books anymore. Not to mention copying books, you won't have to worry about copying scrolls in the future. Gretel, greet. There was a knock on the door outside. The voice sounded familiar. Gretel stood up and opened the door, and found that standing outside were indeed two familiar people. One was his immediate boss's immediate boss, the Flynn knight of their squadron, and the other was the one he hanged at the military camp training ground yesterday afternoon. A life-saving knight of Ciro. Gretel invites them in. Knight Flynn glanced at the table and couldn't help but clicked his tongue. Little Gretel, you are rich. So many pens and papers. Gretel had no choice but to talk about his previous adventure. Before they finished speaking, they saw Knight Flynn and Knight Ciro looking at each other with strange expressions on their faces. After a moment, Knight Flynn forced a smile and handed over a small purse. Your salary this month, just a little bit. The captain has said that your salary will be based on the squad leader's salary first. When your level goes up, I will apply for a salary increase for you. You don't have to be on duty, just come to the military camp when you have time. Greet nodded vigorously. Nolan Knight promised him yesterday that he didn't have to be on duty. A salary increase or something like that is an unexpected surprise. Greet glanced at the desktop and thought that he should write out the battlefield first aid manual quickly. That thing would be popularized in the military camp and could save many people. He took the money bag. Knight Flynn stepped back, and Knight Ciro followed. The embarrassment on his face was visible to the naked eye. He scratched his hair and struggled for several seconds before taking out a silk money bag. Well, thank you for yesterday. I should have given it to you yesterday, but it was too late. You went out early today. No need, Greet jumped back reflexively. Turning his head back, he looked left and right. Just give him something, and it's something he's waiting to use, so that's all. Giving money directly is too scary. Especially after the treatment was completed yesterday, today I ran around and stuffed money into his hand. This way, it always gives him the illusion of receiving a red envelope from a patient. The medical department won't cause trouble for him, right? Gretel's heart was pounding. It took a while to realize that this place was already in another world. There was no hospital or medical department. Thinking of this, he felt a little sad. Seeing his expression of sadness, Knight Flynn took the money bag and stuffed it into his hand. Don't think it's too little. The Scylla family is very tired. 2 daughters were married this year, and the donation from the temple cannot be ignored. He did his best for these 10 gold coins. The rest can only be given one by one in the future. Point given. 10 gold coins. So much. It seems that the savings left by the original father are only so much. Is the original father also a squadron leader? Gretel slowly opened his mouth, thought about it, and then quickly closed it. In the memory, the original father came from somewhere else and had no roots in Heartland City. Houses, armor, weapons, none of them cost money. This box of books alone is extremely expensive and can drain a person's savings for several years. In short, 10 gold coins is a lot. That's a lot. He waved his hands repeatedly and resisted with all his strength. Isn't it the right thing to treat illnesses and save people? Besides, yesterday the temple arrested me for questioning. Uncle Shiloh, didn't you also go with me? Please come forward once, and that's something no amount of money can buy. It's coming. The two knights looked at each other and smiled. Flynn Knight finally stepped forward, thrust the money bag into Gretel's hand, and clenched it in his fist. While pinching, he said, "Just take it if I tell you to. If you refuse to accept the money, we won't dare come to you for treatment if anything happens in the future. Is there a patient?" Gretel perked up. Flynn Knight pondered for a moment. "You said yesterday that the Roman knight's wrist should not be treated like that. Can it be cured according to your method?" Gretel's face dropped instantly. Knight Flynn shook his hand vigorously. "It's not him, it's not him. Do you remember Knight Baron? The best archer in the city. 3 years ago, he received a cut on his wrist." Knight Flynn stretched out his hand and checked his wrist pulse. At that time, the battle was fierce, so he could only bandage his wrist, pick up a knife and fight with others. If he tried to treat it the next day, he would not be able to use the strength and draw the bow. It's just, like that. Can it be cured? It sounds like a tendon injury, but that's not necessarily true. It could be a nerve or blood vessel injury. Gretel pondered. "I need to check it out. If it's what I think it is, there's probably a bunch of equipment." "No problem. I'll ask him to come to you tomorrow. Thanks to at Bing Zonks Yuri, at Zingzin Little Angel Chiao Yu Fan, at Katanchari for the 100 starting coins reward. I fell a lot after reading last week, and it turned out that I didn't write well. I am urgently revising and saving the manuscript with tears in my eyes today. Even so, I am asking for collections, recommendations, book reviews, and all kinds of support. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 44. The two knights hurriedly said their goodbyes and left. Greed spent another day copying books the next day and returned home in the evening. Sure enough, as soon as he arrived at the door, he saw Knight Flynn and Knight Zero, who had been here yesterday, waiting at the door with an unshaven middle-aged man. In addition to the three of them, there was also an unexpected visitor, lingering at the door with a stubborn and playful smile. Greet didn't even get close, but he saw the bright head of the man, which was particularly eye-catching. "Your Majesty Bishop." "Ah, little Greet, you're back," the bald bishop said in a carefree and nonchalant manner. Following a quick copy, he dragged someone out from between the two knights. "You want to treat his injuries. Greet. Can you tell me who that person is first?" He stepped forward to say hello and asked the two knights with his eyes. As soon as I got closer, I smelled a very familiar odor coming from the middle-aged man. This taste is so familiar, Gretel's nose twitched and he was suddenly startled. "You smoke? Is there tobacco in this world? Has the great voyage begun? Rubber, quinine, coffee, cocoa, and the coca that doctors love to hate, have all these things been passed on? There are also 3 artifacts of high yield, corn, potatoes, and sweet potatoes. Are these things also passed on?" Gretel struggled to bring his thoughts back. He opened the door to his home and invited people inside. The bald bishop stepped in unceremoniously, and the three knights followed bitterly, asking as they walked, "Master Bishop, what are you doing here? Have I treated this injury before? Now little Gretel says it might be curable, so of course I want to come and have a look. Do you really believe he can cure it? Hey, little Greet's method is different from others. He said it can be cured, so let me come and take a look." After Knight Baron injured his wrist, he sought medical treatment from time to time, and even made a large donation to the temple of the god of war. However, after applying the healing technique again and again, the bald bishop could only tell the other party, the tendon in his hand was broken and there was nothing he could do. Seeing the knight go away sadly, unable to draw his bow again, the bald bishop felt uncomfortable. So as soon as he heard that it was possible to cure it, even though it was not good to inquire about other people's secrets, he shamelessly squeezed in. 5 people swarmed in, 3 of them were knights, and one was even taller than a knight, and the 20-square-meter cabin was about to burst. To make matters worse, there were only 2 chairs in the hut, and one of them had a broken leg. Greet looked left and right. For diagnosis and treatment, he could only ask the patient to sit on the intact chair. He carefully sat on the chair with broken legs. As for the others, they had no choice but to dismiss the matter with an apologetic smile. They sat on the bed and stood as they pleased. Gretel gathered his thoughts and began to ask. "Knight of Baron. I am. You injured your wrist 3 years ago. What's the situation now?" "Yes, I hurt my right wrist," Greet asked while quietly sizing up the other person. Judging from appearance alone, Baron is 7 or 8 years older than the other 2 knights, with the vicissitudes of appearance, unshaven beard, and a dusty look on his face. His face was dark and his eyes were baggy. Only when Greet asked his name, he raised his eyes and could see a little light inside. Looking at the torso again, although Knight Baron has been injured for 3 years, his figure is still strong and his belly is not bulging. The biceps of his left arm bulged high, and the muscles of his right arm were visibly relaxed. Well, the patient has been exercising and has a strong desire to recover. Greet, the former emergency physician, Nordmark made a mental note silently and stretched out his hand. "Show me your right hand." Knight Baron obediently stretched out his hand, palm up, flat on the table. Greet lowered his head to take a closer look with the help of an oil lamp. There was a knife edge lying on the veins of his right wrist. It was flesh red and raised on the skin like an earthworm. The bald bishop immediately stretched out his bare paw, and just as he was about to point at the wound and describe it, Greet was already relieved. "How does your wrist feel? Can't you bend it inward? Can you stretch it out? How do you know?" Knight Baron glanced aside subconsciously. Knight Flynn on the left, Knight Ciro on the right, denied at the same time. "We didn't tell him." Greet pursed her lips. He wanted to continue asking, but the bald bishop turned his hand and put it between him and the patient, as if he would not give up until he got the answer. "How do you know?" Gretel rolled his eyes. He slashed the bald bishop with his eye knife for a while, but unfortunately he couldn't stand it and had no choice but to retreat. Taking a breath, he pointed at Knight Baron's wrist and explained. "It's so obvious. He injured the inside of his wrist, not the outside. The tendons on the inside are responsible for bending the wrist inward. If the outside is not injured, it must be able to extend outward." "Ah, oh," the bald bishop shrank his hand, "then where exactly was it injured? Why couldn't I heal it at the time?" Greet shook off sweat. Which tendon was injured, how would he know without a physical examination? But no matter what, as long as it's not the right hand. The tendon in his hand was injured, so it was not impossible for Greet to perform this kind of surgery. The problem is that current surgical instruments are too crude. He glared away at the bald bishop, concentrated his energy, and began to examine the Knight of Baron. In a small room of 20 square meters, Several knights gathered together, even breathing was suppressed. Under the light, Gretel's clear instructions sounded out. Come on, bend your wrist. Wrist straight. Reach out. Pull in. Bend your elbows. The arm rotates forward, yes, that's it. Bend your thumb, okay, straighten it, index finger, middle finger. Flex, stretch, turn, press. Greet checked carefully, and Knight Baron also cooperated very well. The only headache is that the bald bishop is standing next to him. Every time he checks an item, he will ask, why do you do this? What is the result? Finally looking forward to the inspection being completed. Greet breathed a sigh of relief and concluded confidently. Rupture of the flexor carpi radialis tendon. What? Glance right and left. Directly across from him, the three knights looked at Gretel blankly. The bald bishop's big head stretched out again and asked a barrage of questions. What's broken? You just made him turn this way and that. What on earth were you doing? Is it cured well? So many questions. Gretel was so noisy that his head was as big as the two. He finally couldn't bear it anymore, slapped the table and suddenly burst out. I'll tell you slowly later, okay? No. Okay. There are more than a dozen tendons, from systemic anatomy to local anatomy, and then to how to conduct physical examination and diagnosis, which can at least be taught in one class. Can we take care of the patient first? The bald bishop was stunned by his spray and stared at Gretel, as if he couldn't believe that this child could explode with such force. Blinking his eyes, it took him a while to react, and he replied blankly. Oh. He shrank back. Knight Baron looked at his wrist and asked cautiously, can it be cured? 21 collections were added yesterday. Although it is still 30% off compared to the peak, it is already very good compared to recent times. Sure enough, revising the article is still useful, continue to revise the article with tears. Please collect, recommend, book reviews, please support in any way. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 45. This look is so familiar. Patients, family members, men and women, young and old, high and low, too many people looked at him like this. Gretel blurted out and wanted to answer it can be cured, but when the words came to his mouth, he turned into. It's possible to be cured. After finishing his conclusion, Greet immediately rubbed his back. Even if he is sitting on a chair with broken legs against the wall, with no way to retreat from behind, it does not prevent him from shrinking closer to the corner. In the past life, most patients and family members would be dissatisfied with the words possible and would most likely want to get to the bottom of it. How likely is it to be cured? How long will it take? How much will it cost? At the end of the inquiry, they often complain that the doctor refuses to give an accurate answer. Then, if someone has a bad temper, there will be another round of complaints. Even if these knights are good-tempered and don't make trouble, he can't stand it even if they pick him up and shake him. Greet looked at the opposite side carefully. To his surprise, Knight Flynn and Knight Ciro were stunned and then overjoyed. Someone stretched out an arm, held down Knight Baron's shoulders, and shook him loudly. It can be cured. It can be cured. Old Baron, did you hear that? It can be cured. You invited so many people to see it, so many people, it's been 3 years, it's been 3 years. The two middle-aged men shouted without emotion. The voice gradually became deeper and hoarse, almost sounding like a wolf howling in the dark night. The Baron Knight sat there like a puppet, showing no reaction and letting them shake back and forth. After a while, he suddenly got excited, stood up and shook off the two of them, bowing slightly to Gretel. Then please treat me quickly. Yes, cure it quickly. Knight Flynn and Knight Ciro immediately woke up. The three of them formed a semicircle, leaning forward and staring down at Gretel, almost as if they wanted to eat him. With scorching eyes, Gretel shrank back again. Not yet. Why not? Didn't it say it can be cured? Knight Baron's voice suddenly became louder. Gretel looked at Flynn Knight for help and argued in a low voice. I can't cure it now, I still need something. His figure was lost in the shouting inside and outside the house. Baron Knight, Flynn Knight, Ciro Knight, everyone is vying to speak. The bald bishop's voice was louder than anyone else's. Little Gretel, can you really cure this injury? What else is missing? Is it a lack of casting materials? If your healing skills are not strong enough, tell me how to cure it, and I will do it. Eyes full of expectancy fell on Gretel once again. Seeing that no one was looking for trouble or complaining, Gretel was no longer nervous. He took a step forward, looked into the bald bishop's eyes, and answered loudly. I am 70% sure that it will be cured. However, if I want my wrist to be flexible, able to exert force, and not hurt other places after the cure, I have to see if I can take advantage of it to know how sure I am. Can't we treat it now? The bald bishop and the Baron Knight were both a little disappointed. Gretel pondered for a moment, grabbed Knight Baron's arm, and explained to him with gestures. That's right. There are many muscles in your arm, and each muscle relies on a tendon, what you call a tendon, to connect to the bones. I estimate that the tendon you broke is the flexor carpi radialis. That is, from here to here. He moved his fingers back and forth on the Baron Knight's arm, pressed on the forearm near the elbow socket, moved downwards, and pressed on the heel of the palm. Then, draw a horizontal line along the scar on your right wrist. It was broken here. The strength of the hand tendon is very strong, and it makes your muscles very tight. Once the tendon is broken, the whole muscle shrinks up. What I have to do now is to cut open the skin and shrink this muscle. Pull out the muscles, lengthen them to their original position, and then let the hand tendons grow. He kept it as simple as possible. Who would have thought that as soon as he finished speaking, Knight Baron stood up immediately and said loudly. Then what are you waiting for? Treat it. With a clang, a dagger fell on the table, its cold light shining. Gretel. I want tissue tweezers. I want a hemostat. I want to pull the hook. This surgery may have to be done under a microscope. If I don't have a microscope, why don't you give me a magnifying glass? His breath caught in his chest and he was choking. Before he could recover, the bald bishop had already asked. I've been treated like this before. But it wasn't cured. Have you ever done this before? Gretel was impressed. Boss, you are brave enough. How many years have you studied medicine? How many gross body teachers have you dissected? Do you know how to operate without severing blood vessels and without severing nerves? How to explain it? Greed took out a pen and paper, brushed on the desktop, and drew quickly. In a moment, the bones of the ulna, radius, and palms were clearly visible, and the dozen or so muscle strips attached to the bones were analyzed. A schematic diagram of the forearm's musculoskeletal structure appeared on the paper. He was used to doing this kind of work in his previous life. He couldn't do it any more vividly. It was concise and clear. That was the norm. One person was painting, and 4 heads came over to look at it. The bald bishop thought the oil lamp was too dark, so he casually used a lighting technique to illuminate the whole room. Gretel, actually, your head is already bright enough. It didn't take even 2 minutes, and a schematic diagram was already taking shape. Greed silently recited a few times, it's like this if you haven't studied medicine before. He slowed down his voice and began to explain. Did you see it? On this arm, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 muscles alone. I won't count, you can count it yourself. In addition to muscles, there are also blood vessels and nerves. I'll explain to you later what nerves are. In short, Any injury caused by these things will make it difficult to use the arm. Do you think it's enough to cut it open, pull it out, and cure it? The bald bishop nodded. Gretel turned to Knight Baron, furious. What's the use of just a knife? What do you think this is? Are you killing pigs or sheep? Make a cut here, put your hand in and pull out the tendons, and just sew a few cuts? I asked if you would cut a knife on the wrist. It won't hurt. Can you move? We will hold him down, Knight Flynn and Knight Ciro replied in unison. Greet scoffed. What's the use of holding it down? This is tendon surgery. Do you think it's bone scraping to treat poison? I can hold back, Knight Baron roared loudly. Gretel yelled back. What's the use of being able to hold it back? If you can't hold it back, your arms are going to be tense. I can't even stretch my muscles when they're so tight. One by one, one by one. He pointed his finger at Flynn Knight, Baron Knight, and the outermost Knight Ciro one by one. A few days ago, I was decompressing the chest of Knight Ciro, but the knife did not penetrate the chest. Knight Flynn next to him took action. Everyone is a knight, I can't even stab them with my knife. Knight Baron was choked by his roar. At this moment, a white light flashed out of the corner of his eyes. Gretel turned his head and saw the bald bishop moving like lightning. He picked up the drawings he had drawn and stuffed them into his arms. Seeing Gretel looking over, he actually winked at him and smiled openly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 46. What's the point of taking my diagram? Can't stealing pictures be considered stealing? Or grab it directly? Gretel opened his mouth and decided not to get entangled with the bishop. He continued to yell at Baron Knight. Besides, even if it's cut, how can I stretch your muscles? With my hands. Why can't you use your hands? Gretel was furious. He sat back down, took a few deep breaths, and couldn't help but begin to doubt his life. Has my ability to educate patients about science deteriorated? It's obvious that everyone understands the previous life's explanation to this point. Moreover, the bald bishop clearly understood. How could these knights still? Forget it, the big boss's understanding should not be compared with that of a spellcaster. How to explain it? Could it be possible to perform surgery on the spot? Good idea. Gretel's eyes lit up. He collected his emotions, stood up calmly, smiled at Knight Baron and said. Let's do this. I'll find a pig leg, or a leg of lamb. Cut it up on the spot, and you'll know how to do the treatment. Lord Bishop, can you wait for me for a moment? Where are you going to find pig legs so late? The bald bishop frowned. He thought for a moment, turned his back on his guests, picked up Gretel and left. Forget it, come with me. Wait. My scalpel. Knife. The bald bishop strode ahead. Greet was dragged by one of his hands and staggered, running out of breath. The surgical instruments carried in the other hand were tossed around, but in the end Flynn Knight couldn't stand it, so he rushed forward and reached out to carry the surgical box. Greet followed the Lord Bishop, and the place became brighter and livelier as he walked. As I walked, there were bright lights and smoke in front of me. Dozens of men were shouting, laughing and cursing inside, but it was a tavern. The bald bishop rushed in and shouted. Old man, do you have any pork legs? There's still half a loaf, someone from the back of the counter responded, can I bake it for you? I'm going to give birth. Take me to the kitchen. The Lord Bishop answered loudly. He walked straight through the crowd, and the three knights strode behind him. The men drinking and chatting in the bar suddenly rolled apart, like Moses parting the Red Sea. Greet, a young boy caught in the middle, managed to sneak in without being stopped outside the kitchen door. The kitchen was bustling with activity. A chef and 3 or 4 workers shuttled back and forth, wishing that everyone would have a halo of acceleration under their feet. The bald bishop entered the door and ran to the meat case. He grabbed the pig leg, looked at it, and turned to ask Greet. "Can it be used?" "Put my legs down." There was a roar from the other side. The chef swung his kitchen knife and came over to kill him. At the last moment, he stopped dangerously. Lord Bishop." The bald bishop nodded casually, still staring at Gretel. Greet stretched his neck to study the pig leg and found that the joints at both ends of the big bone had been cut off, and immediately shook his head. The bald bishop immediately put down the pig leg. "Any leg of lamb?" "No." The bald bishop frowned. The chef looked over, whipped the pig's leg, and ran away, as if he was afraid that the pig's leg would be snatched away a second later. The bald bishop ignored him, thought for a moment, and asked Gretel, "Is it okay to live?" "Fine." Before Greet could react, he answered instinctively. The bald bishop nodded, stood up and left. After a while, under Greet's shocked eyes, he brought in a bleeding live sheep and threw it directly on the meat table. "Can it be used?" "Lord Bishop? You really caught me now?" Gretel was stunned. Seeing that he didn't answer, the bald bishop coughed and asked again, "Can it be used?" It works," Gretel reacted and quickly replied, "That's it?" "Just what?" Gretel stretched out his hand. The live sheep plowed its hoof in panic, almost kicking his hand. He immediately flinched, turned his head, and opened his hands to the bishop. That's it? If you bring a living thing over here, how can I perform an operation if I don't get numb? Bangma is also hemp." The bald bishop laughed. He bowed his head and prayed a few words and snapped his fingers. In an instant, white light, like arrows and spears, tied the living sheep to the chopping board. The sheep raised its hooves in the air and scratched its hooves twice in panic. Although its nose was still twitching, it couldn't even make a whimpering sound. "Ah, this operation will make you feel more comfortable," Gretel sighed happily, stood in front of the meat case, and looked around. "Uncle Flynn, please give me the box." "Uncle Ciro, you can see more clearly if you stand on the left side." "You don't have to stand on tiptoe like this, Mr. Bishop, it's a bit dark here. Can you please cast a lighting spell?" At this time, the bar owner also slipped in and poked his head together with the chef, looking at the bald bishop and the sheep he brought in. Unexpectedly, at first glance, the bald bishop was just standing sideways, while Gretel stood firmly in front of the case, opened the wooden box, and picked up the scalpel. As soon as the knife was in hand, Gretel immediately gained the aura of speaking his mind. Just like he had done thousands of surgeries and taught in turn doctors in his previous life, he started to operate neatly and ordered. "Then, before treatment, you need to shave the surrounding hair. Mr. Baron, don't laugh. If you really have to shave then, you'd better find a knife to shave yourself, and then cut the skin first, no need to cut too deep." At this point, the tip of the knife had already cut into the skin of the lamb leg, making a light slash. The skin cracked in response to the knife, and the blood underneath seemed to be stunned. There was a pause visible to the naked eye before a trace of blood appeared. "Wow!" There was a low exclamation in the kitchen. The boss who came in to watch the excitement and the workers who were helping the chef all had their mouths opened as they watched the bald bishop give instructions and movements, tying the sheep when he was told, and using the illuminator when he was told. The boss even poked the chef. "Hey, who is this young man? Do not talk." The chef squirted back without thinking. He stared at the scalpel flying in Gretel's hand, unable to take his eyes off. "This knife technique is so beautiful, it cuts with one knife, only hurting the skin but not the flesh, and not much blood comes out. It's beautiful." Greet himself was not very satisfied. To be honest, he is more familiar with human skin. With one knife, he can definitely cut through the skin without damaging the underlying fascia. In his previous life, he had dissected mice and rabbits, but he had never dissected sheep. Gretel looked at the blood stains on the scalpel and sighed softly. "This knife is not fast enough, Mr. Baron. If the knife is faster, when I cut your wrist open, the bleeding can be reduced by half." "I'll find a way to find a knife," Knight Baron responded. Gretel sighed. "Not just any knife will do, it has to be the shape I want. Next, pull the skin to both sides, so as to cause the least damage. Lord Bishop, please pull the hook." He gave an order, and the bald bishop honestly took the hook and pulled it back. Greet looked at Hook with half his eyes, and kept moving. pull back, a little harder, okay, that's it, hold on." The chef and bar owner were speechless. The bald bishop said nothing and tried hard to pull the hook. Today is another chapter that has been urgently revised. Each time it is revised, one chapter becomes 2 chapters, and 2 chapters become 3 chapters. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 47. In full view of everyone, the bald bishop struggled to pull the hook. His body fell back and his head stretched forward, trying to see Gretel's every move clearly, so that his whole body bent into a C shape. Knight Zero couldn't see it, and just stepped forward to take the hook when he heard Gretel shout, "Give me a few thin needles. A toothpick will do too." Gretel separated each muscle in the lamb leg and inserted toothpicks between the muscles to mark them. Then he called everyone to see. "Sir Baron, look, there are many muscles here. In your arm, one of the tendons is broken." As he spoke, he turned over the blade and raised it. With a pop sound, the tendon ruptured, and the entire muscle rebounded upward on the spot. The silver-white tendon retracted into the muscle group and disappeared. "Then, we have to find it again now." Greet tilted his head, spread his hands, and pointed at the leg of lamb. "That meaning is quite clear. Just dig it out." Baron Knight, Flynn Knight and Ciro Knight. The bald bishop came over and looked up and down. After looking at it for a long time, he rolled up his sleeves and pushed them along Greet's separated muscles. After struggling for a long time, his hands were all bloody, but he actually found the muscle that was shrinking, pinched it with 2 fingers, and pulled it out. "Hey, it slipped. Hey, it slipped again." The 3rd time, the bald bishop learned his lesson and dug hard at the muscle strips with 2 fingernails. The veins on his wrists exploded and there was a stinging sound. He dug a hole into the good lamb leg meat. Hey, don't. Gretel couldn't stand it any longer. "Your Majesty Bishop, you can't use brute force here, you have to have handy tools, some tissue tweezers." "No, do you have tweezers?" "No." "Get 2 narrow flat iron bars, get more hooks." "Go get it." The bald bishop and several knights issued orders at the same time. There was a sudden rush in the kitchen, and during half a cup of tea, the things Greet wanted were delivered one after another. Although the long iron bars were uneven and the hooks were found by the 2 knights, Gretel thought about it for a long time and had no choice but to accept his fate. So be it. He carefully pushed aside the muscle strips, pulled it with a hook, and asked the 2 knights to pull it away to both sides. Find the ruptured tendon from the depths, clamp it tightly with 2 narrow flat iron bars, and call to the Knight of Baron. Pull. Pull back. Hey. Knight Baron raised his left arm and pulled hard. The mutton leg made a squeaking sound as he stretched it inch by inch, and finally no holes were made in the meat strips again. Seeing the ruptured tendon and the other end coming together, Gretel immediately gave the order. "Okay. Right here, hold still, don't move. Lord Bishop, please use a healing spell to connect the 2 sides of the tendon." White light falls. A group of people gathered together to take a look. Sure enough, the tendons that had been cut by the scalpel had grown back together again. So this is how it's cured. You can still see it clearly this way. Old Baron, look, your Tetsuji can also be connected like this. Little Gretel, you are so awesome. The knights tooted in admiration. The bald bishop simply worked hard and cured the sheep. As soon as the magic of confinement was released, the sheep was lowered to the ground and ran away. A little bit limping. Little Greet, why are you still lame? That's why I said I should have something handy. What do you need? The bald bishop asked in a deep voice. Gretel's eyes lit up. The set of surgical instruments given to him by necromancer Lin En was better than nothing. The radian of the blade is wavy, the surgical scissors are so dull that they can only cut flower branches, there is only one retractor, and a vascular forceps. What is a vascular clamp? In terms of type and level of sophistication, Greed has a background in 21st century experience, so he really doesn't like it. But if he was asked to find someone to build it himself, Gretel weighed his wallet and felt guilty. I originally thought about saving money piece by piece, but now, the temple took the initiative to speak. The temple is rich. The waste is thick. Beat the local tyrants and divide them with scalpels. Don't be polite to rich people. I can't explain it in a sentence or two. He looked at the bald bishop expectantly. Why don't you go home first and I can draw it for you to see? After about a meal, the bald bishop looked at a large piece of paper filled with drawings and densely labeled various surgical instruments, and his eyes widened in surprise. What is this? The handle of a scalpel. This. Round blades. These are curved blades, triangular blades, large, medium and small. What about this? Vascular forceps. Why did you draw two identical ones? Oh, this is not a vascular forceps, but a needle holder. These are fine tissue forceps, large flat forceps, small flat forceps. These are mosquito forceps, these are pointed mosquito forceps. These are serrated scissors, curved oblique scissors, straight-shaped oblique scissors. This is a big bend, a medium bend, a small bend. By the way, mosquito forceps, pointed mosquito forceps, fine tissue forceps and blood vessel forceps are relatively small, and the blacksmith's hands are rough, so it is best to find a jewelry maker to make them. This, so much. The bald bishop was speechless. Gretel sighed, this is just what is urgently needed at the moment. It's still early to get everything ready. During that operation, the trolley that the instrument nurse pushed over contained a dazzling array of dozens of instruments, and it would have been impossible to operate the operation. There is zero sense of security. Knight Baron looked at the pattern on the paper, then at the injury on his wrist, and then slowly lowered his head. The expression on his face was changing, bright for a while, dim for a while, and finally, he clenched his fist tightly. Gretel kept paying attention to his expression. He had seen this kind of entanglement, hesitation, and finally making up his mind countless times in his previous life. Those families who are strapped for money always wander in the emergency room, at the payment window, and in the lobby when they decide whether to sell the iron, whether to go bankrupt, and whether to fight for the possibility of cure. He couldn't control much at that time. 365 days a year, there are dozens or hundreds of patients a day, and there are always a few of them who are in financial difficulty. But this time, he could finally take charge. Gretel pressed Baron Knight's shoulders in time. He raised his head, smiled brightly at the bald bishop, and said in a determined tone, Master Bishop, can you please make a set of these instruments? After finishing, I will bring Knight Baron to the temple to complete the treatment. I can also write out these pictures and the entire treatment process in detail. The bald bishop's brows slowly relaxed. He shook his head deliberately. That's all. Isn't this enough? Gretel was full of confidence. Master Bishop, there are many warriors among the believers in the temple of the god of war, right? How many of them have old injuries that cannot be healed? I don't know them, but you know them, right? The bald bishop nodded slightly. Indeed, he knew about a dozen high-level warriors who had regretfully retired due to old injuries. A lot of these warriors are rich, right? Guess, if they knew that their old injuries could be cured and they could go back to the battlefield, what would they be willing to do for the temple? Other temples can't cure it, only the god of war temple can. You mean, there is only the temple of the god of war? The bald bishop was moved. Greet spread his hands. Anyway, I don't want to teach the spring water temple. As for the church of the god of nature, well, the identity of this divine enlightener is fake, and it is too late to hide away. The bald bishop lowered his head and pondered. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this proposal was feasible. He looked at Gretel and laughed. You brat! Just teach us how to treat it, and you plan to earn a set of knives for free. Just say it's okay. Gretel snickered. The bald bishop slapped him on the shoulder. Can I say no? Ouch, don't hit me. If it's broken, no one will do the surgery. Fight the rich. The scalpel is divided. It is divided into collections, recommendation votes, investments, and book reviews. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 48. Knight Baron left with great gratitude. Even if he wasn't cured or even started treatment at all, Greet's hard work was already worthy of his sincere gratitude. Gretel paid no heed to his thanks. Before leaving, he held Knight Baron's hand and kept telling him, "Don't smoke. Don't smoke again when you go back. If you smoke, it won't be easy for your hands to heal." Why? Just listen to me, Gretel pushed him out with all his strength. Tobacco, nicotine can cause blood vessels to spasm, making it difficult for wounds to heal. Most obviously, fingers after severed limbs are replanted are prone to necrosis. Although what Baron Knight needs to do is wrist tendon surgery, it is always good to have less impact. But you want me to explain to you what nicotine is? Thank you, forget it, just be obedient. After sending away the guests, Gretel returned to the table and started to draft. To say that you are happy when you get rich. If you have 2,000 pieces of paper piled up at home, you can write whatever you want. It doesn't matter if you tear it up one by one. You no longer have to scratch and fill the gaps in the paper. He sorted out his thoughts, first wrote the medical record in a quick and easy way, then dipped it in ink and wrote down one line at a time on the manuscript paper. Anesthesia, hemostasis, disinfection, surgery. Anesthesia, ask the god of war temple if there is any ready-made magic. If so, conduct an experiment to determine the result, if not, ask the pharmacist. Hemlock, datura, henbane, belladonna, ask if there is a corresponding magic. Hemostasis, tourniquet, hemostatic forceps, magic to stop bleeding. Disinfection, wash hands, prepare spirits, and sterilize all instruments and clothes at high temperature beforehand. Gretel put a question mark on the word equipment. I swear to Hippocrates, he really doesn't have as big an opening as a lion. He only prepared 2 hemostats and 3 tissue tweezers. What if something unexpected happens and the equipment continues to be used if it becomes contaminated? Holy light disinfection? Flame disinfection? It would be great if the mage's hand could be used instead of tissue tweezers. That thing is not physical, so there is probably no need to worry about contamination. I still have to work hard to learn magic. He recited the word lists copied today and yesterday, and then fell asleep. Get up the next morning, go to the city guard's barracks to get a horse, get on the horse, and go straight to the magic tower. He borrowed the horse from the city guard, or rather, Captain Flynn gave it to him because of his favor. When you come to the magic tower, you leave it in the stables. You give the gatekeeper 5 silver coins every month. When you return to the city, you send it back to the army for nourishment. With the time saved, I can copy 20 more pages of words every day. Got money? We can afford to foster horses. And the standard of living has gone up. The monthly salary has increased from 5 silver coins to 15 silver coins, and I have received a large income of 10 gold coins at once. There is no need to worry about the cost of copying books in the short term. Gretel took a bite of the white bread stuffed with cheese, and then took a bite of the cured meat, enjoying it. After finishing this lunch, hurry up and continue copying the dictionary. Finish copying the dictionary, then translate the magic book, and see what magic in the book can be used for surgery. Just as I was thinking happily, there was a squeak behind me, and the door opened wide. Gretel turned around and saw a little boy jumping in from outside. He looks like a child from a wealthy family, with a shirt and tie, breeches and leather boots, and a row of gleaming silver buttons on his velvet jacket. Seeing Gretel looking at him, the child immediately slowed down his pace, his face was straight, and his hands were behind his back. He was obviously only a little less than 10 years old, but he looked so old-fashioned, which made Gretel want to laugh. Newcomer coming? Oops, I can't copy books today. I don't know how long this child will stay. If he stays here all the time, he will have to find other ways to copy books. Fortunately, I put everything away during lunch. Gretel thought quickly and said hello casually. After speaking, he raised his eyes and saw the man following the boy, and immediately stood up. Mage Elliot. Master Elliot nodded to Gretel and turned to leave. The boy watched him leave, then suddenly rushed to Gretel and made a face at him. Who are you? I am. The boy obviously had no intention of waiting for Gretel's answer. After making a face, he ran to the corner, talking to himself and looking through Gretel's backpack. Without flipping through it twice, he pulled out a stack of writing paper and flipped it. What are you doing? Wow, you're copying books. SHH. Greet stopped him hastily. I wanted to reach out to grab it, but I was afraid of tearing the manuscript paper, so I raised my hand and stopped. Turning around suddenly, outside the library, Master Elliot happened to look over, looked at Gretel, and slowly walked away as if nothing had happened. Gretel felt a little relieved. Looking inside the room again, the boy had already started giggling and shaking some papers. Sometimes he holds it in front of him, sometimes he hides it behind his back, running around the room. You're copying the book? You're finished. Mr. Master said, you can only read, not copy. The paper was not considered strong to begin with, but when he shook it back and forth like this, it made a tear sound and broke on the spot. Greet was anxious. Hey, give it back to me. He goes up and grabs it. The boy dodged left and right, giggling, and suddenly slipped under the table with a squeak. Before Greet could bend down, he heard the child shout. How dare you rob? How dare you rob books? Mr. Elliot, someone is copying books secretly. Mr. Elliot. The child's voice was loud and sharp, and when he shouted loudly, the bottom of the magic tower buzzed with echoes. Greet was too late to stop him. Just as he was about to cover his mouth, a majestic voice sounded outside the library. What happened? Gretel stopped and turned his head. Outside the door, Elliot has already bowed and saluted. Teacher. Oops, I got hit by the real owner. Greet secretly cried out in pain and could only salute. Your Majesty the Master. What are you arguing about? Master Gearman stepped in. It was still the red robe that was tightly tied around the belly, and it was still the same pair of shining eyes. With just one glance, a few scattered pieces of manuscript paper floated up and flew into his hand automatically. I can't escape. I originally wanted to make some achievements and ask someone to request it, but it's only been 2.5 days. Can you tell what I'm doing in 2.5 days? Can you impress this mage? Or is it too late for me to defect to the necromancer now? Maybe get killed by a fireball? No, I probably still don't know how to use fireball. This is a library after all, so I'm afraid it will burn. Gretel was thinking wildly. His heart was beating wildly, his breathing was getting faster and faster, and there was a slight cold sweat on his back. It seems that I am indeed nervous. Adrenaline is being secreted in large quantities, constricting blood vessels and increasing heart rate. Gretel was surprised that he still had such fantasies. He took a step forward, held his head high, and looked straight into Master Gearman's eyes. With a calm tone, he defended himself. I didn't copy it according to the book. I just did some sorting and excerpting to make it easier for me to remember. You're not just copying books, the boy shouted. Master Gearman raised a hand to stop him from arguing. He frowned slightly, looked at the manuscript papers in his hand, and suddenly said, "Where are the others? Take them out." As expected, I haven't forgotten about quitting smoking. Give yourself a thumbs up. The protagonist is about to learn his first magic. Please give us your support. Seeking collection, seeking investment. Please give me recommendation votes, please give me monthly votes. Please review the book. Guys, let me see your hands. Yesterday, only 15 new collections were added, but 18 new old books were added. Wow! You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 49. He's just copying. The boy shouted. Seeing that Master Gearman ignored him, he jumped hard and his face turned red with anger. Okay. You don't care about that? I told my grandpa to go. Do you want to pass this year's assessment in your magic tower? What's the background of this naughty kid? Such a loud tone. Can decide the assessment of the magic tower. This naughty kid can't be the second generation of magic, no, the third generation of magic, right? Greet quickly leaned over, took out all the writing papers from his backpack, sorted them a little and handed them over. Master Gearman flipped through the pages one by one, then suddenly snorted coldly, raised his hand and threw the manuscript paper in front of Greet. I asked you to tidy it up, and this is how you tidied it up. Ah, oh. When did you let me copy it? Gretel was shocked. But Master Mage's words clearly cleared up his account of copying books privately, which was of great benefit to him. Greet was not stupid, and immediately lowered his head and admitted his mistake. I was careless. I didn't even understand the uppercase and lowercase letters. The order of the letters was a mess. Copy again. Ah. Yes, Greet was overjoyed and hurriedly agreed. The mage ignored him and walked out with his hands behind his back. After taking 2 steps, he gave the second command. Copy 2 copies and keep 1 for yourself. Hand it in within half a month. Yes, Greet replied loudly. You can copy books now? You can copy it openly. Very good. Dictionaries are indeed useful. Let me just say that anyone who wants to learn a new language cannot resist the charm of a dictionary. You know magic, so you don't need to learn Elvish? No need to learn dragon language? Hey, are there dragon and elven languages in this world? He collected his thoughts, quickly caught up with him, and followed the mage to see him off. Master Herman walked a few steps, suddenly stopped, and said to his disciple, "Take care of him." The tone was slightly harsh. Elliot quickly agreed, and Master Herman shook his head and left. Elliot maintained his congratulatory gesture until the teacher's figure disappeared into the elevator, then he turned to look at Gretel. "I'm sorry for causing you trouble," Gretel quickly apologized. When the child was yelling just now, Elliot pretended not to notice and walked away. Gretel could see clearly in the library. Looking back now, it is clear that Elliot's deliberate act of betrayal was noticed by Master Herman, and he really felt sorry for him. After Gretel apologized like this, Elliot's face softened a bit as he was still a little embarrassed. He picked up the manuscript and flipped it over, then suddenly raised his hand and patted Gretel hard. "You're so lucky." Yes, Gretel smiled relaxedly, with a little lingering fear. Elliot glanced at the boy next to him and shook his head. "You've caught up with a good time, you know? The Magic Council assesses each magic tower every year. How many mage apprentices have been taught and whether new magic has been improved are all counted as scores. If the score is low, the allocation will be less. Next year money has been tight all year. Seeing that the assessment period is coming in June, the research has not been going well. You are a little gadget, it is quite interesting, and you can also prevaricate. Thank God. Copying a dictionary is indeed useful." Gretel let out a breath, and his shoulders immediately slumped. Master Elliot turned over 2 more pages of manuscript paper, then suddenly turned his head to the sky and sighed loudly. "The teacher asked me to take care of you. Well, I don't know the alphabet. It's so troublesome to teach. I'm going to do the experiment in a hurry, so dash." He lowered his head and murmured a few words, then suddenly raised his hand and pointed a finger between Gretel's eyebrows. A cold flash of light flashed through Gretel's head, and she felt that her head was bulging, as if an unknown amount of stuff had been crammed into it all at once. Elliot waved. "Read the book by yourself, I'm leaving." Gretel turned back suddenly. On the pages of the book spread out on the table, there were magical words that I had never memorized before, never studied before, and did not recognize at all. At this moment, the meaning of each word was clear. Level 1 Magic, proficient in languages. Such words flashed through Gretel's mind. I have seen this spell in online articles and games in my previous life. It seems to have a time limit, and the duration is determined by the level of the mage. In other words, when the time limit is up, will you forget everything immediately? Gretel didn't have time to say thanks, so he arranged all the letters in order and copied them on a piece of paper. When he turned back, Elliot's steps were in a hurry and he had already gone far. "Thank you," Gretel shouted as he scratched the doorframe. He turned and rushed to the bookshelf, racing against time to pull out basic meditation first. Meditation is the foundation of the mage. If you can be 1 day early, then be 1 day early. Before the time limit for proficient in the language has passed, memorize this book first, so that you can follow it when you go back. When the title page opened, Gretel glanced at it and breathed a sigh of relief. Meditation is a lifelong practice for a mage. Hela Uriel, year 382 of the magical calendar. Thank God, I understand. This book is written in magical words, not some strange words, so there is no need to try to decipher it. He knows every word on it. The senior who wrote the book, you are so friendly. Gretel concentrated on reading word by word. Whether it is written for juniors who are just starting out, or because I have an approachable personality, this book Basic Meditation is very simple and easy to understand. The clear meaning from the beginning is the meaning of meditation. Meditation is a way for mages to hone their mental power, and then use their mental power to observe and reflect the world. Know every word. Every word is understandable. Put together, what is spiritual power? My attention? Thinking ability? Brainwave activity? I can't see or touch it. Would it be helpful to do an EEG now? Or, can the brain-computer interface developed by Musk and others help extend mental power outside the body? Or maybe it's not brain waves, but brain nerve magnetic fields. Gretel suppressed all the complaints, calmed down, and started reading. Time was limited and he didn't know if he had time to copy it, so he could only read and memorize it. After reading it once, and then a second time, when I turned halfway through the page, my mind suddenly became confused, and then the words on the book turned into large, twisted patterns, occasionally containing a few words he knew. The spell duration expires. With the sound of over, it was immediately cleared, leaving no trace of memory left behind. Gretel sighed in annoyance. He spread out a new piece of white paper, turned to the first page of Basic Meditation, and started dictating, line by line, relying on the illustrations and a few scattered word reminders on the page. The meaning of meditation. What is meditation? How to start meditating, how to calm down your mind, enter a state of sleep but not sleep, focus first, and then diverge. How to touch the world with spiritual power, what you will feel when you meditate for the first time, what are the taboos? Line after line, page after page, before you knew it, a pile of white paper filled with words was piled up on Greet's left side. Unexpected result. Tonight, you can try meditation for the first time. Magical world, here I come. I deleted a chapter today and saved it. I feel so tired. Please comfort me. Please collect some, recommended tickets, monthly passes, book reviews are also fine. Pave. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 50. On the way home, Greet was haunted by excitement. He even carried a few buckets of water in the darkness, chopped firewood to light a fire, took a hot bath, and used half of the firewood stored at home. Life in ancient times was troublesome. If there was running water, a water heater, or, even if he knew magic, he could directly use magic to heat the bath water. Tisk, even if you want to improve your living standards, you must quickly become a mage apprentice. Gretel sighed as he lay in the tub. However, no matter how troublesome it is, you still have to take a bath. In order to improve the success rate of meditation, bathing and changing clothes are also a necessary process. He cleaned himself up, climbed onto the bed, and sat down cross-legged. There is something wrong with the flexibility of this body. I'm only 16 years old, but I can't move my left leg over my right foot, my right leg over my left foot, and my 5 hearts to the sky. This, although basic meditation does not say to sit cross-legged, as a Chinese, if I start meditating without trying this posture, I always feel uneasy, and the success rate is -5, -5, -5. Kind. Gretel broke off his left foot and then his right foot, trying again and again, but to no avail. He tried to relax his feet and fold them loosely into a quadrilateral shape, but he couldn't sit still. Then he tried to straighten his feet into a triangle and lean back while sitting. I had no choice but to fall down on the bed. Gilu rolled to the wall and sat up against the wall with his legs straightened. Well, I feel comfortable. Now close your eyes and eliminate distracting thoughts. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe in, imagine yourself in darkness, vision turned off, hearing turned off, smell turned off. Greet followed the description in basic meditation and built himself up mentally step by step. Let yourself be quiet, quiet, pine, quiet, empty. Maybe the self-hypnosis has some effect, or maybe it's because I traveled through time and it really helped me learn magic. When Gretel concentrated his energy to one point just like before launching the healing spell, something really seemed to light up in the darkness. What's this? Neither up nor down, neither left nor right, neither inside nor outside, this is me. Gretel was shaken violently and could hardly maintain his current state of emptiness. He closed his eyes and tried to calm down for a long time before finally regaining his composure. Go into meditation and then, take the next step. According to the description in basic meditation, to exercise mental strength, you first need to build a virtual self. Then, draw strength from the outside world and solidify yourself step by step. After tempering to a certain intensity, you can dissipate your mental power and begin to influence the outside world. As soon as I thought of this, the bright spots in the darkness began to change according to the illustrations in basic meditation. A little person with limbs, a head, facial features, bones, muscles and blood flowing, was outlined by light spots and rays of light, standing silently in the void. The next moment, it was like a stone dropped into the water. With the light person as the center, ripples spread out into the darkness, and then quietly fed back. With each feedback, the light person outlined by the void light seemed to solidify a little bit. Is this me? Is this illusory light person my spiritual power? Greet was slightly confused. In the dark, it was as if a connection told him, yes, this is you, this is your spiritual power. It condenses based on your physical body and fluctuates with your will. When it is strong enough, it can feed back the physical body and intervene in the present world. However, the details of this light man are wrong. Wrong muscles. The blood flow is also wrong. The arteries and veins are not separated, the left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle, and the direction of ejection is not reflected at all. Nerve. Lymph. Capillaries. These are not painted at all. Greet was a little irritable. The illustrations in the book Basic Meditation are too rough, many places are not drawn, and many places are wrongly drawn. Risking his reputation as a medical student, he can find 7 of them just by searching. 8 or 10 mistakes. This won't work. Gretel concentrated his energy and began to recall the maps he had seen in his previous life. Unknowingly, the little man made of white light began to change as he recalled. 206 bones are connected together firmly and elastically from bottom to top via more than 300 joints. 640 muscles, attached to bones through tendons, or directly connected to other muscles. The heart beats powerfully, shooting waves of blood into the arteries, recycling it through the capillaries, and then returning to the heart along the veins. Nervous system, respiratory system, digestion, urinary system, endocrine system, lymphatic immunity, reproduction. Finally, the skin covers everything underneath, the hair grows, and the nails sprout. Even if he had not personally dissected or treated every detail, he had studied it, drawn it, and memorized it countless times. I remember it now, vividly in my mind. That's it? Even in another world, the structure of human beings must be like this. Greet thought firmly. He treated patients with his own hands, cut open the abdomen, pinched the liver porta to stop bleeding, cut the trachea, and stabbed through the chest cavity. Successful treatments again and again told him that his perception was correct. When he came back to his senses, the little man in the void was countless times more delicate than the illustration. Looking closely, it is exactly the same as the human body structure that Gretel learned in his previous life. The heart made of white light beats powerfully. Bang, 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 once. With every beat, a halo of nothingness is emitted, and the aura emitted by this newly constructed villain is more than twice as powerful as before. Is that so? Does the mental power need to be as consistent as possible with the body so that it can resonate with the body to the maximum extent, receive support, and feedback to the body at the same time? Gretel doesn't know. But he had an inexplicable feeling, his mental power was much stronger than when it was first constructed. So, the next thing to try is to perceive the world. What does the world seen by spiritual power look like? Still following the description in basic meditation, Greed took the initiative to control the ripples emitted by the villain and actively extended them outwards. Then, the whole world, under the perception of spiritual power, changed. The steady and heavy strength carries the world down to earth. The light and elegant power, freedom, and joy, never stops for a moment. The hot and restless power is unrestrained and brings the greatest firepower. Soft and dense power, tranquility, and nourishment, silently spreading vitality. Earth, water, fire, wind. The four elements, Gretel was very surprised. As his mood fluctuated, the villain in the meditation environment was violently shaken and almost collapsed. This is, the world I perceive with my mental power. After being surprised, Greet was overjoyed again. According to basic meditation, I can vaguely perceive the four elements. My mental power has reached the level of a mage apprentice. From today on, I can start analyzing magic. The saved manuscript I wrote yesterday has been deleted again today. I'm crying. Seek comfort. Yesterday was another day when the new book collection did not catch up with the old books. Please collect, recommend, invest, book reviews, and all kinds of things.